Hello, welcome to another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Ryan Priest, how are we doing today?
Great. Good morning, Sal.
We got two Ryans in the podcast room today. Returning guest, Mr. Ryan Batt from Producers United Producers Incorporated. Ryan, how are you doing this morning?
Doing pretty good, Sal. I appreciate you guys having me back on here.
Well, apparently you're pretty popular. You got an extended family or something, because, or maybe it was the title of the podcast, but we had definitely a lot of listeners and viewers on the
second highest viewed video so far.
I think it's just dumb luck, Sal.
So don't screw it up this time.
Yeah, I'll try to do better.
Ryan, remind us what your title is and what do you do?
So my name's Ryan Batt. I work for United Producers Incorporated. We're a livestock marketing company. We're based out of our corporate office out of Columbus, Ohio. We have, I think, 17 different auction markets and probably another 17 or 20 collection points across the Midwest. And my title is facility manager, which I facility manage our new location in Harnard, Kentucky, and our local market in Little York, Indiana.
So Harnard, Kentucky, give us a reference, but something bigger than, not that, hey, if we have listeners and down there, this isn't a slight, because we have to give big reference points to us up here too. So what's it close to or south of? Or?
So it's kind of funny as you mentioned that, Sal, because Harnard, Kentucky's about like Little York, Indiana.
Yes,
they really don't exist on the map, but they're on the map. So you look in Harnard, Kentucky, the biggest city next to it, which is like right on the, just from my house to your house basically, but. It's just a couple minutes away, but Hardinsburg, Kentucky is located right down there. That's kind of the north central part of the Kentucky, and a lot of cattle ground down in there. Breckinridge County, and like I say, it's pretty well fun to go to work, because I think I turn 3 times to get there, and I travel about 80 miles. So
it's a straight line.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, one of the topics we thought about talking about today was just cattle production, and kind of we know that beef prices, hamburgers are expensive in the stores right now, and I don't know that people understand. Certainly farmers do, livestock producers do, but I don't know that people understand what all's involved in the what kind of cost inputs and care is involved in a cow calf before we get a hamburger in the store.
Yeah, like I say, there's a lot that goes involved in that. I mean, it goes back to, you as a consumer, your household wife comes in there, and we try to market our business as, the lady that gets home after church and goes to the grocery store to get her Sunday supper for the family, or the housewife that's going to plan a meal for every night for the week. They don't have no idea what goes into it. And I think the American Angus Association has done the best job of anything as far as marketing the product. The product that gets marketed, you see on let's say for a fast food restaurant, it says Angus beef. You hear a lot of Angus beef, and your high end steakhouses Angus beef. That's done. The Angus Association has done a tremendous job with that. The housewife that comes in town,
just awareness.
Yeah, just awareness that we're going to get a black Angus beef. Now, is there any difference in the quality of meat for anybody that's got Holsteins, or anybody that's got Hereford cattle, or anybody's got Charolais cattle? I'm going to beg to differ on that.
Okay.
When the hide comes off.
So Ryan, we can mark American Angus Association off of our podcast.
No,
but really,
seriously though,
yeah.
seriously, it's a marketing scheme, and you know what? Hats off to them guys, because they did a tremendous job. I mean, that is amazing of how they did that. But
you're saying internally there's not much difference between a black cow and a red cow and a. A lot of farmers, I tell you what, whenever we get the guys listening to this, it's going to stir some trouble. You can flash my number on that screen if you want right now, like you said last time. But like I say, when the hide comes off at the harvest location or at your local locker plant, it all boils down to how you fed the animal. Oh,
and like I say, a lot of farmers do the hard corn, with the corn, soybean meal, stuff like that. The old school type version, ear corn back in the 70s and stuff. A lot of people fatten cattle on ear corn. You got a local farmer there in Salem that's did it for years on silage. Real good guys doing that, and they're getting the yields and their performance. But you go back to nowadays, you're using your byproducts. Your ethanols and your distillers grains, stuff like that. So it's a little bit different. It takes maybe a little bit longer. Obviously, we're using genetics that are made to make your animal grow faster. So there's a lot of variations that go into that, but it all boils down to, how can we market our product? And marketing starts on day one.
Well, let's start at day one, and I know because I see them, and I know when the calving starts, and the farmers are out in the middle of the night with rangers and pickup trucks, and it's February or early March, and it's cold. That's when the animal care starts, right? Can you tell us what's involved with when calving time comes?
Right. So like I say, we're throwing bulls out. We'll be throwing bulls out there around Thanksgiving weekend, maybe a little bit before, hit them August, September calves, for our fall calving season. 285-day gestation period on them things. So, that's a big thing there to make sure you got your dates right. A lot of people don't want to calve in the hot months, your July, August, September, first part of September. Reason we don't do that is just because of the heat. You don't want a cow going into labor when it's heat. A lot of heat outside. You get more flies that way and stuff like that. So, most of the calving season, there's kind of basically 2 calving seasons. Now, there's nothing wrong with leaving the bull out 24 days, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But, the most of the bigger populations of cattle are going to leave them in those 2 calving windows of your, turning the bull out, at certain different times to calve in the spring, calve in the fall. Whenever that calf hits the ground there, like you said, you got to take care of it. The proper way to take care of that calf, to make sure that it's up nursing, make sure it's getting its feet up under it. If it's cold outside, you probably gonna need to lay some straw down, something for it to get warm. There's lots of companies, the bigger companies in the West and stuff. They calve in calving pens. They'll put 300 or 400 cows on about 20 acres, and they have horseback riders that ride through them and check them 24 hours a day, and they'll know when every calf is being born. So. Down on a local level like we are, we have some barns. We keep stuff in when we think it's going to get close, or we monitor them throughout the night at 2:00 in the morning. We go out and check them and make sure stuff's going right. But there's various ways to do that. But the main focus is to get that calf on the ground, get it up, get some nourishment in its belly, and then keep it going after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people think, well, I've got 15 acres of grass. So I'll just throw a fence up and put some cows out. There's a lot to it. I appreciate this insight. So once they become weaned, let's talk about that feeding practice going into there, and we'll dive into markets as we go forward. But let's go ahead and raise those cattle up, and you might even talk about how does that get split up. Some guys keep those calves all the way through to rebreed again. Some keep them themselves to finish out, and then some actually become stockers and go elsewhere. So let's just start with the guy who's going to bring them in and keep them through their life.
Right. So on that deal there, most of the farmers around in the area that we're in southern Indiana, most of those guys will bring those cattle in and probably pull them off the cow at around 6 to 7, 8 months of age, and hopefully they're weighing 400 to 800 pounds in that category. Now 800 would be an exception of a really good growing calf and probably more of a production type animal that we got that is bred to grow that fast. But most of them is going to be weaned at 500 pounds, I would just guess, in that time frame. And, when they come in, they're going to need vaccinations just like we do our children, going to school and stuff like that. They'll get a black leg shot. That's a something that's in the soils of your ground and stuff could cause them to have an issue and die. But and we got to get them a respiratory shot. The respiratory shot's basically to try to prevent them from getting sick. We don't need nobody getting sick and nobody getting pneumonias or anything like that. So that's kind of a benefit to that.
So the calves, they get shots just like our kids would. I mean,
that's correct.
Just different diseases, like we would get shots for vaccines. They get something similar.
Yeah,
flu shots, or put it in those terms, but they get something similar.
Yeah, and it's similar to that. It definitely is. And then like I say, we. It depends on where the calves come from too. I mean, there's some places that take better nourishment of their cows as they're, when the calf's in gestation and stuff like that. So, a lot of people, if you do the true vaccination program, you're probably going to give them a shot to. We use a lot of Multimin 90. That's a shot we use gives them a little bit more minerals and vitamins in them, and we also deworm them. Cattle pick up parasites and stuff like that as they get going and need to be.
So, what about this trend of people wanting antibiotic-free meat, and that's really not a good practice. I mean, it's pretty bad to the animals, right? I mean, to let them
right. So on that part of it, like I say, you can still give them the vaccines. An antibiotic-free, you can still give them the vaccines. The vaccines just helps their immune system, keeps them from getting anything. Or you get an antibiotic-freeze whenever that one gets sick or gets that snotty nose, and you have to doctor it. Anytime you have to give it a medicine, then that goes against it. And like I say, when you do that, just a little animal husbandry here, you really ought to keep track of that. You don't think much of it that you're going to go out there and give that calf a shot this morning before you run off to work, or it's kind of got a droopy head. I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of something. That's just one thing that we've come into that we've kind of overlooked in the years, and then something that we probably need to keep track of. The way the marketing is today, there's a lot of marketing schemes, just like we mentioned the American Angus Association there earlier that's come in and promoted the Black Angus beef, and it's in all the restaurants and stuff. But now the thing is stuff that's never been vaccinated, stuff that's never had any antibiotics, stuff like that. Do the animals perform and grow better? No, but that's what the person wants. So if the person wants that, that's what you're going to do.
But it's kind of mean to have a animal that's sick and not care for it,
right?
Because there's a withholding. Whenever you do give them a shot, there's a period, right? I mean, they don't go to market after they've had shots. I mean, there's a what's it called? Just a
so there's a backgrounding period.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like I say, we diving in there, moving on into the let me finish. Let me go back to where we was at the first whenever Ryan was talking about keeping them. We're probably if we're going to keep them, we're going to pull them off the cow. Then we're going to bring them in, give them their shots, vaccinate them, start them on grain, keep them going, feed them all the way out, or feed them to a certain size, pull replacement heifers out, and then to make cows for the next year, and then probably finish the steers on out. Now like I say, a lot of them steers are going to finish in that. Rough idea of 13 to 18 months is going to be something that you would probably keep for yourself, unless you did a grazing thing. Some people do intentional grazings through their pastures in the summertime. To rotate that animal around, kind of gets a little bit more age and a little more maturity on it, makes a little bit bigger bone, and makes the animal they just do just a little bit better. They finish out of a higher carcass yield, so that's where we're at on that end of it. But to jump back and say we take those calves, we pulled them off the cow and put them in the stockyards, or sold them to a local farmer or something, to fatten out to make beef. There's a lot of different things that can happen there. Like I say, we can put them on a grazing program. Let's say we weaned that calf there in August, September, or something like that, and we're going to vaccinate it, put it on feed, and then we're probably going to keep it up on feed, and maybe we're either going to put it directly in the feedlot then, or we're going to hold it off and we're going to run it on the hillside. You move down in your lower part of the United States, and your West Virginia, Georgia, Kansas, stuff like that, Oklahoma, they got a little bit longer grazing season. They plant wheat to put cattle on it, then they combine it later on. So like I say, there's a little bit of variance that you can do there. A lot of it just depends on the weather. So this year the country's been pretty dry all the way around. Not a lot of water anywhere as far as the South, Oklahoma, Southern Indiana for sure. A lot of those cattle are probably going to go more on feed this year versus where years past they may have went out and grazed for a while and then come back in and put in the feedlot.
All right, so we've got them raised up. We're talking about finishing them. You just brought up drought effects on how you finish them. So let's make a turn and talk about what's the herd size look like through the whole United States now. Because I know in years past when it's been droughted out, out west they start selling them. They just have to get out because there's no way to feed them. There's no way to get water to them. Has our herd size been affected this year? So
we'll talk locally for a minute. Our herd size has been affected. Yes, they've been affected, and I'll just be flat honest with you. One of the reasons our herd size gets affected is just for the age of the farmer. That's the most critical thing that I worry about long term. Okay, so long term, our herd size and the age of the farmer is very scary to me. I think that whenever dad, grandpa, somebody's getting out of business is junior coming back from college or his daughter coming back and wanting to say, hey, I want to run this 50 head cow operation, or hey, I want to I'm gonna commit myself to baling hay at 5 o'clock after I get off work. So it's kind of one of them things of long term, not only the weather, but just the age of it. The age of the farmer is a huge critical thing about coming in. Now we get into the weather part of it, and here in Indiana we're lighter on rainfall. I know Oklahoma's lighter on rainfall. It just depends on where you're at geographically, I guess you might say. But as far as the cow numbers going down, I know that there was places in Texas. I know there's places in southeast Kansas, stuff like that was a waiting list to sell your animals this summer. I know right there at the 1st of June they had trailers backed up for 2 to 3 miles from the facility to unload cows, and have record numbers of cows. So looking at the just as a region of North America, the cow numbers have to be down. But this is what gets me. It seems like that we have these natural disasters. Like we had some stuff in South Dakota, I think last year, with they brought the cows down out of the hills or something, and they moved back up, and we had the snow. Then we had flooding somewhere else, the year before, and they lost record numbers of cows that had issues in those natural disasters and stuff. And they keep saying when the reports comes out, well, the numbers never change. So it's kind of one of those things. And like locally, we're running more slaughtered cows and bulls through the facility locally than we did last year. So is local numbers changing? Yeah, I would say they're changing, but it goes back to where grandma, grandpa are kind of done with it. They're over it. I'm going to rent my farm out to a guy that's planting corn here. I don't got to go out there and feed hay in the wintertime. So, it's a cycle. You can look at the long term and the short term. If it rains next year, grass is plentiful, we're not feeding hay this time of year, well then, obviously then the markets will change and the cows' numbers will go down because, we have access to forage and stuff like that, where this year we're feeding hay right now. Everybody's feeding hay, and it's kind of scary.
I guess that kind of piqued the next question. As soon as you said of course, the numbers being down, but it sounds like every year there is something in the country, an event that affects the population. So that's kind of baked in. Because my question was, why is it still so expensive?
Right.
So
to dive in that just a little bit, I was sitting here thinking while I was answering that question, and I thought, we have a conference call on Tuesday mornings and with our risk management team, and we do risk management through United Producers, and that's pretty cool, and hopefully maybe get them on here one day just to give your listeners an example, and it's livestock related, not so much corn and beans, but I looked on the board this morning, and yesterday all the livestock, the cattle closed higher, the feeder calves and the live cattle closed higher. Well, guess what corn and soybeans did? They closed lower. So, flash my number on that screen again. I like it whenever corn and beans go down because my cattle go up. So, it's one of those things. You got to take the good and the bad. But, if you can lock in right now and look at the future of this here cattle market, if you can lock them, 600 to 700 pound feeder calves in next August of 2023 for $2 a pound, I don't see your meat in the store is going to go down before 2023 because that's $1,200 for a calf. You're going to, that's weighing 600 pounds and that makes your fed cattle got to go up.
And the demand just remains high.
Demand, I get fortunate enough to do meetings and stuff with different folks, and a lot of times that involves going out and meeting them at a restaurant or something, or we'll go out to eat after a livestock show or something like that, and to see people that still order the steaks and still order the cuts of meat that are $28 to $30, $40, just for the piece of meat, not the counting the taters or whatever you do on the side, just for that. And you're sitting there thinking, golly, and like I say, I figured up some of them fat cattle we sold this week, and they probably averaged, around $1,800 to $1,900 a head. But if you're selling, $40 steaks, and there's, so many steaks in a cow, and you got all this stuff left over, and like I say, there's stuff in the middle that you got to cut out for, like we talked last time on the podcast, we talked about trucking being so high and some other stuff. So, I think the middleman, the packers making a pretty good chunk of money, but like I say, it's not like it. I don't suggest that it's going to get cheaper anytime soon.
I would agree with that, and it's funny you say that because people we'll still pay that for the steak. But I just had a good friend of mine last night tell me that I was discussing a board meeting with his board of directors, and he said a lot of our best meetings, though, we ended at a steakhouse. He said your best conversations happen over a steak. It's just funny because it is true. And I don't know if you're prepared to talk about that today, but as you say, at $2 a pound, at 1,800 pound, or so there's some money being made there at $1,800. However you reference that, what would be a rough estimate of what was in that animal to get it to 1,800 pounds? Can you speak to that? I mean, from a feed cost, obviously it'll be different on grass versus grain.
Yeah,
but,
so I mean, we can dive right back into that and go into like where we started this conversation at. If you even just start out, before, like today we're going to breed this cow, okay? Let's say it's early November here in southern Indiana, and we're going to breed this cow today, and she's going to have a calf here sometime in September. Just the cost from today to that calf, I'm just going to throw the number out there and tell you it's going to cost you $400 to $500. And it's harder to throw that number out there on
no income coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you take that calf that we talked about that was born, in let's say January, February, March, somewhere in there, and you're going to keep it like we talked about the first time as a mature heifer, well, you're looking at roughly 2 years before she has the calf, 6 months later before you sell the calf.
Wow.
If you sell it at the sale barn. So, it's one of those things where, you're 2.5 years out from day one. If you got a baby calf and you got it right out of the cow, put it on a bottle, and you wanted to raise it to make it have, production and get it calves, you're 2.5 years out. That's a lot of time. That's obviously a lot of money that you're going to have out. Getting back to it, a feeder calf, let's say a feeder calf right now, you weaned it off the cow, you took it to the sale barn, that thing, let's just say it's worth $800. And that's just a rough figure, and that's not going to catch them all. That's just going to catch a part of them, good solid average. So if that thing's worth $800 right now, after you weaned it off the cow, you put that thing back in, like I say, they're bringing at the stockyards, bringing $1,800. Where you think, oh yeah, that's $1,000.
Yeah.
I made money.
Sounds like great money, right?
It sounds great. It sounds really great. But here's the problem: that thing weighed probably about 500 pounds, and you got to get it to 1,300 pounds. So there's another year. All right. So I try to teach my kids and tell them, and I hope they're seeing it at home is, like we're buying our 4-H calves right now, for example, that we're going to take to the fair, and those things are weighing 600 to 800 pounds. When we get to the county fair in June, those things are going to weigh 12 to 1,400 pounds. Hopefully, if everything goes correct, we don't get no sickness. So that there in turn, kind of shows how fast those things are going to grow and how fast we're going to do it. But to make them grow fast and to make them do right and make them perform, we got to push them with the feed. We got to push them with the corn. And as we just talked about, I don't know what corn prices are today. I want to say $6.50 to $7 again. So that it takes a lot of corn to get one there. You're looking. I'm just just on the cost of feeding a steer out. I would say you could feed one from some people's probably doing it for $450 to $500. And I would say that, like there's some people that's probably doing it for, $600 to $700. So yeah, you still going to make $300. But here's the other catch. There's more catches as we go. Did you pay yourself for doing the labor? Did you pay yourself for hauling manure? Did you pay yourself for putting the bedding back in the facility? So, like I say, I'm not saying out here trying to tell everybody that cattle people don't make any money, because we do. Not sitting out here trying to say, don't never raise a fat steer, because that's not right. Because here's the difference. On those fat steers, if we're talking local and we're talking just like what we did, Sal, you call and say, hey, I need 4 or 5 fat steers. The cost that it takes to get it there, the time that you don't have to be home and do everything the way that you want it to be done, it's easier to buy one.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go again. You get one bought for, let's just say, the $1,800. You're going to take it to the local locker plant. He's going to charge you. Do you remember what your cost was?
It was more than it was, but yeah, it was still a good value.
Right.
They do a good job, but it was a little more than
let's just figure $500 so for to make it easier. But you got $1,800 and $500 invested in that. If you went to the store and my dad, he's a real I think Mom does the shopping and Dad sits at the meat counter because on Sundays he'll say, did you see the price of that? Or maybe you ought to you'll go here. They got this on sale, and it's funny to sit there. And
JC stores got them for
this. Right. And it's funny to hear that and. Set back and then every time that he's telling these stories about the prices and stuff and I'm sitting back there thinking okay, well, this animal costs this is how much this costs, this is how much this costs, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, wow, that somebody's making a lot of money because that steer that we just roughly figured at $2,400 by the time we got it processed and put in our freezer, a whole beef animal, and we went to the store and bought that whole beef animal.
It's a lot different.
We're somewhere around that $5,000 mark. So talk about buy one get one free. That's pretty different right there. But and going to the local locker plant getting one butchered. Hats off to those guys because they're really doing things that that's about as old school as you can get. I had the opportunity to go through that JBS tour. I think I mentioned that last time up there in Plainwell, Michigan, and it starts on the hoof and ends in a box, and it's neat to see how everything how everything's processed. But you can really help out your local community. You can really help yourself out. But I get a lot of phone calls that people will say, "Hey, do you have any steaks for sale? Do you have any hamburgers for sale? Can we come to your market and buy some hamburger?" And I'm like, "No, we sell the the real product." Well, how much would it take for you to make it into hamburger? And so
but I really want hamburger.
Right. And
what I'm driving at.
Yeah. And I get it. I understand. I understand the whole thing. But and it's cool. That they don't understand, and you get to explain it to them a little bit, and then they're sitting there kind of thinking, well, I got this refrigerator at home, and it's got this freezer in it. And I'm sitting there thinking, so you got a refrigerator on the bottom and a freezer on top. And they're like, yeah, how much meat can I fit in there? I said, well, how many vegetables or ice cream do you got in there? Because, and the world's at a fast pace right now. So, if you got a freezer and can afford to buy a freezer and plug it in and know that you're going to use the meat, yeah, you can make the money. But, there again, there's a lot of people that, maybe they want to eat this one night and that one night, and they may not use a whole beef in a year or two. And so, it's better for them to buy that half a beef or something like that. And maybe it is better for them to buy stuff out of the store because they're going to have a cookout next weekend or something like that. But, the initial cost of it is just from
how long is it keep in the freezer?
So, I don't know. Sal, do you know
I'd say,
that?
Everybody, you look at what people say and then what's reality. And I think if it's wrapped well at the Packers, a couple of years.
Yeah, I would say that's right. I know on pork, Mom always says the sausage is getting too hot when it's been in there and it doesn't have a taste to it, after 7-8 months or something like that. But, on the beef, I've never really, I guess I don't keep it around long enough. I guess
it goes pretty quick.
So,
it's not a problem.
Especially the fillets and the ribeyes.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a steak get thrown away unless the freezer went out or something.
Right.
But if you think about like that, we don't see like freezer burnt. That's the term people don't hardly say anymore. And, if you go to one of the Packers and they, very few of them vacuum seal it, which is, oxygen is the enemy for something in a freezer. But I don't know if the deep freezers are better or hold the temperature more consistent. But I'd say a couple of years on beef and probably a year on pork.
Yeah, I'd say you're exactly right. And like I say, it's I talked to a few of my Amish fellows there the other day and was asking about it, and they was like, hey, can you get me some pigs? Can you get me some pigs? I said, well, yeah, I can get you some. And I said, what are you going to do with it? And they said, we're going to can it. And I was like, hey, there's another, they don't have electricity, so, they have to improvise different ways of processing the meat. And he was telling me all about how he does that. And now he gave me a jar. I don't know if I'll eat it or not, but like I say, it was a way that they do it.
That's a way to store
They get
food.
to keep meat too, and so it's kind of cool the way that you can, once you do get this animal up to processing weight. What's the different ways to process it? Because that's it's pretty neat how you can make stuff work when you need to.
Yep. I got one more question. I know we're getting this has been a good podcast. We lost track of time a little bit, but grass fed versus grain, and I know for a fact there's folks in Florida that come up here to buy beef because what they have down there is grass fed and. Or should we just save that for another podcast? Let's just do that. Let's just save that one for another podcast.
What, are you scared?
Yeah.
Yeah, the grass fed and the grain fed. That's a whole topic itself as far as getting into the stuff that you do and how long it takes to make one. I would say that $1,800 would jump really high if you went to grass fed.
And if you want a really good ribeye, you better put some corn in it.
That's exactly right.
Ryan, do you have anything else?
I do not. We appreciate you coming again.
Yeah, I sure appreciate you being here. And anytime, like I say, we could give you some more knowledge about the cattle industry, we'd be glad to come over.
Yeah, maybe we'll do pigs or something else next time.
Sounds great.
All right, well, that's another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. And have a good day. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.